Good morning. I want to thank Tricia Mikolai for inviting me here today, and I'm pleased to be here. A big reason I was invited to speak was this story that I wrote last year. It was the cover story in a special storage edition of PV Magazine. And so the first part of my talk will review what I reported on for this story, and the second part will cover storage options besides batteries. And at the end, I invite comments as well as questions. I'm a reporter, not an expert, so I can't really give expert opinions to your questions. So you saw a more recent version of this chart in the last presentation. I'll just say that states in blue, there was very little storage planned as of early last year. States in blue had procurement mandates for storage. States in green, utilities made storage an eligible resource in their integrated resource plans. And for the other examples, storage was planned at least 7 years from now. So why was so little storage planned? Three things: unknown future costs, uncertain value of storage, and some models could not handle storage. So challenge number one, cost projections varied by a factor of 2, even just 1 year ahead for 2019 as of last year. You see how far apart the low end and high end projections were. Just recently, we've seen an estimate of $640 per kilowatt hour capacity for 4-hour duration batteries based on manufacturer surveys from Bloomberg New Energy Finance. The cost of battery packs may be higher. So, and that $640 value compares to the $1,000 lowest projected cost for 2019 on the previous slide. So things are changing quickly here. Now back to the status as of a year ago. Challenge number 2, there was FERC Order 841 uncertainty. That uncertainty is not yet resolved. And the values here are values for capacity, energy, and ancillary services. Basically, what revenues can storage generate by providing those services. And then the third challenge was that some utilities were, as I reported in my story, using models that could not handle storage. This topic is beyond the scope of this presentation. I'll just say that the Energy Storage Association had a primer online about this topic. And now that association offers a conference on this topic. In the future, battery storage could increase tremendously. Recall that last year, less than 3 gigawatts of storage were planned. The Energy Storage Association envisions 35 gigawatts of storage within 6 years, and the Brattle Group sees greater potential of 50 gigawatts of storage. So more information about these topics are available in the PV Magazine print edition story, particularly on modeling of storage and case studies of storage planning by 4 utilities. This May 2019 DOE report covers similar ground to what I have discussed so far. The title, well, you can read the title. This report involved a review of a number of IRPs. So now in this second part of my talk, I'm going to review developments in non-battery storage that have become public information so far this year. Whoops. Okay, in those 3 areas. So pumped hydro, many of you are probably familiar with pumped hydro. This technology appears to have great potential, yet cost information for new installations is just emerging publicly. This is a FERC map of licensed pump storage projects totaling almost 19 gigawatts, and there's more capacity in the eastern part of the country. Researchers in Australia have found 530,000 potential sites for pumped hydro worldwide. And this portion of their global map shows the potential sites they identified in the US. There are way more sites in the western US because there are more mountains here. Okay, PV Magazine USA wrote about the largest pumped hydro project that holds a preliminary permit from FERC in Arizona, and a division of Fortis owns this project. And here's a diagram of the project. To me, this makes it look pretty simple, as if somebody could make a scale model of that as a high school science project, using Play-Doh and plastic straws and some itty-bitty reversible hydroturbines. My point is that simplicity can be a virtue. The Hoover Dam is almost 100 years old. In all, FERC has awarded preliminary permits for 20 gigawatts of capacity. And I see, I compared the map that we just saw from the researchers in Australia to this map, and the people in Australia didn't pick up the sites in the middle of the country, in South Dakota, Minnesota, Ohio, Kentucky, or Oklahoma. So maybe there are more potential sites out there as well. And FERC has received applications for another 19 gigawatts of capacity, heavily concentrated in the Southwest. In terms of costs, one team of analysts has found that with better financing, new pumped hydro is cost competitive with batteries. And they maintain that pumped hydro could obtain better financing because it's a mature technology. The DOE report I mentioned previously reported capital costs of $2,400 to $3,100 per kilowatt for pumped hydro. And at 10 hours of daily generation, that would be $240 to $310 per kilowatt hour capacity, which would be higher than Bloomberg New Energy Finance's value for batteries of $160 per kilowatt hour capacity. And NREL, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, and Lazard have not yet provided cost estimates for pumped hydro, for new pumped hydro. As a reporter, I believe that a project is more likely to be built if it has received third-party validation. At least 3 firms have provided that validation for new pumped hydro by investing in pumped hydro projects, those being National Grid, Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners, and Fortis, which I mentioned previously. Now turning to hydrogen. Because PV Magazine reports on the solar and storage industries, we cover green, so-called green hydrogen, that is hydrogen produced from solar or wind power. And I had no idea how big a deal hydrogen it could be until this morning when I read a story on PV Magazine USA that says that the International Renewable Energy Agency says that 16 terawatts of solar and wind power capacity may be needed to produce green hydrogen by 2050. So that 16 terawatts compares to the 10 terawatts of total generation capacity globally right now. And the name of the title of the report is Hydrogen, a Renewable Energy Perspective. Okay. So how many did this experiment, maybe in high school, where you convert water to hydrogen and oxygen? using electricity. We did that in 1973. I don't know if they're still doing that, but that was a very memorable experiment, and it shows just how simple and basic the technology is. After electrolysis, the resulting hydrogen may be stored and later used in fuel cells to generate electricity. At Solar Power International in Salt Lake City earlier this week, I saw a booth put up by a firm that stores hydrogen in oil using a catalyst and heat to get the hydrogen into the oil. And a given volume of oil can hold many times the volume of hydrogen at atmospheric pressure, the same volume of hydrogen at atmospheric pressure. So this electrolysis technology is scaling up. Here, this is a validation that this is becoming real. So the first item references a 20 megawatt system, the second a 30 megawatt system, the third a design for a 100 megawatt system, and the fourth a consortium aiming for a gigawatt scale system. Some people use the term power to X to signify that the X might be hydrogen, or else hydrogen that's converted to ammonia or some other compound. A Japanese firm, JGC, is working on converting hydrogen to ammonia. Now turning to other storage technologies, storing heat in molten salt and later using the heat to generate electricity has been demonstrated at the Solana concentrating solar power plant in Arizona. Storing cold in the form of liquid air or cryogenic energy storage is also an option. Highview Power of England is developing this technology, and there may be others as well. Highview reports that the levelized cost of cryogenic energy storage at $140 per megawatt hour. Now, at first, I was recalling the $160 per kilowatt hour capacity cost for batteries that Bloomberg New Energy Finance put out. But those numbers are totally unrelated. The units, what they're measuring is different. In one case, the levelized cost, and in the other case, the capacity cost per kilowatt hour. So, and then finally, in terms of third-party validation, Tenaska Power is working with Highview to market its technology in the US. Ice may be produced when electricity prices are low and used later for air conditioning. Southern California Edison is taking advantage of this simple technology. And one firm is developing a system to store heat in rocks and later use the heat to power a conventional steam turbine. And our coverage is forthcoming on this, so that's why I'm not disclosing what's in the reporting yet. And then this is a bonus slide after the battery fire in Arizona recently. The Arizona Corporation Commissioner Sandra Kennedy did some research into 5 other types of batteries besides lithium-ion batteries, and the results are shown here. So that concludes my presentation. Yeah.
Any questions anyone wants to ask or comments before we break? Yeah.
Explain just a little more how the cryogenic storage works.
Cryogenic means cold, and they make the air cold, and then I guess it becomes liquid. So it shrinks, and they can keep it in an insulated container, and then they release then they open the valve, I guess, and the air the liquid air is allowed to become heated or is actively heated, and it expands, and that expansion can drive a turbine. That's my understanding. And the most economical uses are where there is waste cold, and there's some industrial process, I forget which, where that's the case. Maybe natural gas compression or decompression, whichever.
Right. And William, I wanted to ask just on some of those storage projections that you'd researched and read about, do you have a view on sort of the approximate mix of technologies there? Like what portion of that would be lithium ion and what would be some of these other technology types?
Well, as our previous presenter indicated, I think the curve is going to go like this, but for which technologies at what rate, that's anybody's guess, right?
Sure. Yep. All right.
As the costs of solar and wind come down, then storage becomes more attractive in general, and that's, I think, is driving some of the technology, the research and technology development that we're seeing.
Mm-hmm. Great. We'll look forward to the November article.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Could you add a little bit of your knowledge about flow batteries? There are some demonstration facilities now in New England.
Can you just speak up, because you know more than I do about it?
I've got a microphone here. One moment.
I was asking if your research has...
But maybe you can just make a comment and state what you know, because I don't know anything about this.
Oh, I see. Well, in the Boston metropolitan area, there are several companies right now at the R&D stage and early demonstration stage of putting into place some, as a result of the Massachusetts Storage Initiative, flow batteries, which allow for cheaper, longer storage than lithium-ion batteries. So it may help to complement shorter-term storage facilities by lithium-ion for the longer ramp-up needs in the evening as the sun goes down.
And I am recalling now that flow batteries use an electrolyte that can be stored separately from kind of the active part of the battery, and so you can store the electrolyte relatively inexpensively, so they have that advantage.
One more quick question. Have you seen any changes in the environmental acceptability of different technologies like pump storage? Is that something that you see any sort of support for among people who are environmentally minded?
I have not reported on that, and there's a permit. I believe that includes environmental review, but I haven't covered any of these projects beyond, the very high, beyond that one, frankly. Yeah.
Yeah, David.
Yeah, I went through that pump storage report that was done by the Australians. There were a lot more false positives than there were the inverse that you noted. The other thing was, did you guys report on the million-mile battery solution that Tesla just came out with?
A colleague covered that story, yes. Is there anything you want to say about it?
Well, I think that's the biggest change in my mind. I think that's a total game changer. Supposedly they already have it working, and it's patented already too. To me, that's the utility game changer right there if it works
and I
out.
think it was the equivalent maybe was a 20-year lifespan for a utility battery, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, it pushes it into a 20 to 30-year life cycle now.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, David.
It's time for lunch.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks, William.
Thank you.